My opponent has brought up some good points, and I'd like to address them. The key here is to focus on the debate question: do less guns equal less crime? I stand firm on it in that it does not. Here are the reasons why. My opponent mentions the misuse of guns by alcoholics. There are laws being placed that make it illegal for people to own a firearm while impaired by alcohol or drugs. Charging those individuals will prevent them from being able to pass a background check known as the Brady Law to purchase a gun in the future. Even with bans on firearms, the criminal element will still continue to be able to purchase them on the streets. Homicides may decrease if we ban guns altogether, but homicides are just one section of crime. We are focusing on the overall crime rates. Crime rates in London compared to New York is a good example. London and New York are very similar cities. Crime rates in New York has decreased from 2010 through 2018, while crime rates in London has increased from 2015 through 2019. Focusing on crime rates is a prime example on how less guns does not mean less crimes. Violent rates or crime rates will be the same as long as human intent stays the same. Nothing has changed from our primitive years on Earth. There will always be people out there preying on other people. My opponent stated just because we give a gun to a smart person does not mean that they will know how to use it. Just like any tool, a person only becomes proficient with that tool with training. Should we say the same thing about knives for personal defense or eating utensils for those who have health issues because of overeating? The problem is not with the tool, but with the character of the person and their intent. My opponent gave an example of knife attacks in London, stating more people would have died if it was with a gun. The attack, even with a knife, is still considered a violent crime, and the stat is still the same. We are debating less guns means less crimes, but the stat is still the same no matter what the tool. As my opponent mentioned in his debate video, guns lead to higher homicide rates. Guns are used in self-defense, and when they are used in self-defense to protect themselves, it is still considered a homicide. Even if a homicide by the firearm is justified through self-defense and no criminal charges are filed on the victim, we need to be practical in understanding guns are a form of lethal force, and when used correctly or incorrectly carries a high probability of life being lost. When used correctly, guns can save many lives. For example, let's talk about the knife attacks in London. If the citizens in London would have been able to carry firearms legally, a citizen could have effectively terminated the threat, making uh, less victims being hurt and or killed by the attacker. Deadly force can come into play by many methods, not just by guns. Criminals can use blunt force weapons, edged weapons, improvised weapons, or everyday household items to carry out a lethal attack. I found a peer-reviewed journal titled Revisiting the Gun Ownership and Violence Link by Fan Kirsten. In this peer-reviewed journal, the author states multi-level analysis on the data from 26 development countries show that ownership of a handgun show increased risk for victimization by violent crime. High ownership levels, however, seem to diminish the victimization level for less serious violent crimes for the non-owners. This journal is perfect evidence and supports my stance on guns or less guns do not mean less crime. It states those who own a handgun are at higher risk of being victimized by serious crime, but counteracts and lower the crime rate overall for lesser crimes and help lower the risk for non-gun owners becoming a victim of lesser crimes. This is because of the rational choice theory. Criminals weigh the risk and benefit of their crime. If they know a certain group or population has a high gun ownership percentage, they will most likely move on to a softer target. Another peer-reviewed journal I found titled Societal Derivations for the Legal Gun Trafficking in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, review gun control in the country. Ethiopia has a very anti-gun stance and laws preventing ownership, transportation of guns, and selling and buying of guns. The peer-reviewed journal states, as is finding today, nonetheless, both the Anti-Terrorist Act and the firearm regulations has not been successfully implemented to prevent illicit trafficking of guns and violent crimes associated with illegal gun possession. A city in the United States I see this happening is Chicago, Illinois, one of the strictest gun states in the United States. This is because criminals don't follow the law and they're still able to get their hands on firearms, knowing that the general public most likely does not have a firearm because they follow the law. This makes people who live in this area soft targets and easy targets to become victimized through serious crime and lesser crime.